first reading from Isaiah is really a plea from Isaiah that the people can come to understand that they can rise from the ruins of their lives. They're coming out of Babylonian captivity. Everything has been destroyed. He wants them to have hope and faith that they will become a powerful and mighty nation in the eyes of God. So he's calling them to hope out of destruction. Now, the second reading seems pretty straightforward. We begin at a certain point and move forward, but let's go back half a chapter. At the beginning of this chapter, Paul's telling people that they're really messing up bad. They're doing things terribly wrong. First of all, he says you're at communion, at the celebration of the Eucharist, you're looking around to see who's wealthy and who's not, who deserves a higher place or a lower place. He said, you are not doing this at all well. And in this business of speaking in tongues, he says you're dividing the community with this gift that you've been given. Well, now, a few verses later, he shifts gears and he starts to sing the praise of the gifts that all of us have received. Now, every gift is given to the individual for the good of the community, okay? Not for the good of the individual. The gifts we have can be misused. The gifts we have can lead us off into a place where we think we have it all. We know what's best for everyone. We have no authority greater than ourselves because our gifts have been so exaggerated. Our gifts can also be our curse. And so a constant prayer we need is to always see how our gift is not just helping me at all, but helping the community. And if it is rightly used. The gospel, John's gospel has been called the spiritual gospel. It deals, he has soliloquies that go on and on, talking about most complicated theological ideas, you know. And we talk about him as recognizing Jesus more as God than as human. But then you turn around and you find at the very beginning of John's gospel one of the most human stories you can have. You know, here's a wedding feast. Now, I don't know, for us, a wedding feast is Saturday afternoon and evening, and that's about it. Go back 2,000 years to the Middle East, and a wedding feast is a week, okay? I mean, these people don't get together very often. They don't have a lot of surplus things or time, but when they have a party, they have a party. And to run short of wine is a disaster. And then Jesus not only gives them a little wine, he gives them 180 gallons, you know. That'll keep them going for a few days, you know, I would hope. He's right in the midst of the most mundane of all things, you know, the partying going on at a wedding. It's interesting now, some people would say the miracle isn't really a miracle because all he did was pour water back into the wine jugs. See, the wine jugs were empty now, so there's separate water jugs and wine jugs. He poured water into them, and they tasted of wine, and that was fine. But the author makes it clear. It was not the wine jars that were used. It was the sacred water jugs that they used for the sacred washings that they did of their hands, their face, their plates. Everything that needed to be washed came from these water sources, these jugs. And so he took what is a sign and a symbol of the Jewish religion, those jars of water, and he changed it to something brand new. As Isaiah wants them to rise up from where they were to something new, as Paul wants his community to stop using the gifts, you know, for the individual and come to something new, so Jesus wants to come from the Jewish gift of water to the gift of wine, which will become the blood of Christ. Now, it's interesting in the Gospel of John, just for your edification, Mary is mentioned twice here, and Jesus says to her, my hour has not yet come. And the second time is when his hour has come. She's at the foot of the cross. And it's during that period of time that she learns who he is, how he has changed from being a Jew, celebrating his religion with water and law, to a God-man giving his life for us. And that we're pulled out of law into love. We're pulled out of law into sacrifice. Now, sacrifice not of animals or of our own human lives, but sacrifice of our will. I choose to do those things that draw me closer to God. We are made in the image of God. Everything is made to help us to find that end, to go back to God. To the extent it is not used, to the extent it is used to do that, it is good. To the extent it draws me away from God, it is evil for me, bad for me. I'm a recovering alcoholic, so alcohol is bad for me. It may not be bad for you, but for me it is. And I have to find these things. I have to discern what they are. Now, this was where I was going with my homily until a few things happened this week that I need to kind of adjust my homily, and I hope I can do this well. I got a call. See, across the boards back there are the pictures alerting us to what is so terrible about abortion. Abortion is a terrible thing. And I stand with that statement. I came in Wednesday night, and the high school students were watching a video about how evil abortion can be. We have outside the flags. We have the roses that we were asked to send in. I believe we need to try find a solution for this terrible ill. But I got a call the other night, and this young girl, probably the age of most of you, was crying. And between the tears and the sobbing, I finally got the story from her. She hates those flags. She hates them. Her sister had an abortion. And her sister is destroyed by this. And she's destroyed by this. And she says, Father, every time I walk down this street, I see that abortion kills babies. And she says, it hurts so bad. It's like being slapped in the face. And that's what my sister thinks. But she can't say anything because she's the sinner. She's the one who had the abortion. And I want to tell you, I'm getting this in about 10 minutes because she's sobbing through the whole thing. This is raw pain going on, okay? And so as I look at our responsibility to use the gifts that we have, they have to be balanced. I will say this, that I think probably for most people, now there's a 10 to 20% of the people don't care at all. I can't deal with that right now. I don't know how to deal with that. But for the rest, I think abortion is a deadly event in their lives. Not just for the one that is not born, but for the mother who had the abortion. I think it's a deadly experience. And we need to be able to minister to those women. We have a house that they're trying to put together. It's been put together, trying to find people to run it. Genesis House, for women who are having babies and have no support. Their families have kicked them out. The fathers want nothing to do with them. And yet we point at that child and we say to that woman, and we say, it's just your fault. You're the one, it's the problem. She's not the problem. She's the one who's trying to do what's right. But why should she if everybody turns against her? You go back to your deepest catechism, and it says to commit a sin, you have to have freedom of choice and full consent of the will, right? I know dozens of women who've had abortions, who've had neither. And I cannot call them sinners. Because you cannot sin unless you are free. You cannot. Did they do something that was intrinsically wrong? Yeah. But I guess my plea is to hear, if you can, the pain of those who've had an abortion. I don't like to do that to anyone. I don't like to think that my righteousness drives a nail through someone like that. That's not my vocation. I have to find balance. I have to stand in the middle. I always talk about being in the middle. Here, middle is really hard. Because if you stand in the middle, one side says, you're for abortion. The other side says, you could be a lot gentler. So we try and balance. I think that's a very important job for all of us. I approve of the roses that you're asked to sign. I think it's a political statement. It needs to be made. But as a religious statement, as an act of judgment on individuals, who throws the first stone? Who of us is innocent? Who of us in the point of desperation, lowliness, powerlessness, might not do just the same? So as we pray for those unborn, we need to have a heart and a love for these mothers who too are suffering.